There's a certain kind of quiet that falls over a place like Bainbridge, New Hampshire in late November. It's heavy. It's cold. All the tourists are gone. The leaves have been raked away, and it just feels still.
It's the silence before the snow.
Exactly. And in 1997, that silence was absolutely shattered by a single gunshot, a gun that didn't just end a life. It performed, really, an autopsy on 2 entire families.
Yeah.
We are looking at a case today that isn't just a whodunit. It's so much more. It's a whydunit on this massive psychological scale. We're talking about The Pact by Jodi Picoult.
And it's a brutal text to get through, honestly, because on the surface you have what looks like the absolute Romeo and Juliet archetype, Chris Harte and Emily Gold. They're 17. They're beautiful. They've been inseparable since birth. But the moment you apply the pressure of, forensic science and family pathology to that archetype, the whole romantic story it crumbles.
And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're not just retelling a story. We're going to strip down the machinery of what Picoult calls the virtual family. We're going to look at the forensics that make the official story, the suicide pact theory, feel physically impossible.
And we're going to examine this really terrifying logic of what you could call a mercy killing.
Which brings us to the crime scene, the carousel.
The carousel, right. It's such an innocent image, but it's the epicenter of this whole thing.
It really is. It's late at night. It's freezing cold. Chris and Emily are found at this local landmark. Emily is dead, gunshot wound to the head. Chris is wounded, hysterical. And he tells the very first officer on the scene that they had a pact.
They were supposed to go together.
That's his story. But, and this is the absolute core of the mystery, he says he fainted before he could finish his side of the bargain.
And, immediately you have to look at how the source material describes the town's reaction. Bainbridge is the kind of place where, a zoning dispute is front page news.
Right.
And suddenly they have a dead girl, and the town's golden boy, the high school hockey star, is being accused of murder. But to really get why this hits so hard, you have to understand the ecosystem these 2 kids grew up in, this virtual family.
I found that concept so fascinating and, frankly, a little suffocating. You've got the Harts, James and Gus, and you've got the Golds, Michael and Melanie. They aren't related by blood, but they are... Fused is the right word.
The text even mentions their properties share a common hypotenuse.
And that geometric term is doing so much work there. It implies there's no way around each other. You have to go through each other's lives. They don't knock. They share keys.
They just walk in.
They just walk in. But the most telling detail for me, the one that says everything, was the Friday night ritual at the Happy Family Chinese restaurant.
The irony of that name is it's thick.
It's completely palpable. They've gone every single Friday for 18 years. But look at the dynamic. Gus Hart, Chris's mom, she orders for everyone.
For the whole table. The whole table. She doesn't take a poll. She doesn't ask if anyone feels like trying the Kung Pao chicken this week. She just tells the waiter the usual.
Wow.
And sure, it's efficient, but psychodynamically, it's a total erasure of individual preference. It sends this message that the group identity is way more important than the individual self.
And the banter described in that scene, the one right before the tragedy, they're talking about nipple rings, midlife crises, career changes. It's incredibly intimate.
It's so intimate.
Gus even jokes that there should be a statute of limitations on people who live in each other's pockets for this long. And it sounds idyllic, but when you look at it from the kids' perspective, from Chris and Emily's perspective, it feels like they were handed a script the day they were born.
That is the absolute key insight. If you're Chris and Emily, you are the keystone in this virtual family arch. You're holding the whole thing up. If you 2 don't get along, or God forbid you don't fall in love, then the whole justification for the parents' friendship, this whole merged life, it just falls apart. They were literally placed in a bassinet together as infants.
Their marriage wasn't just predicted. It feels like it was required to keep the parents' world spinning.
It creates this immense pressure cooker, and then finally, the arch collapses. The inciting incident is that phone call. 3 a.m, James Hart, who's a surgeon, gets the call that his son, Chris, is hurt.
And at the same time, the Golds get a call about Emily. They all rush to the ER, and this is the moment where the virtual family officially dies.
It's over.
You've got James trying to use his doctor status to bulldoze his way to his son. But the real character study here, for me, is Michael Gold.
Michael, the veterinarian?
Yeah, the vet. A man whose entire professional identity is based on healing living things that can't even tell him where it hurts.
Right.
He gets to the hospital, and a doctor pulls him and Melanie into a quiet room, a little alcove, to tell them that Emily was dead on arrival.
And The reaction that Picoult writes for Michael is just, it's so visceral. He doesn't scream, not at first. He just runs.
He physically flees.
He flees the news. He runs past Gus Hart. He runs past the nurses. He turns a corner and he just vomits into a trash can.
It's a complete physical rejection of reality. The healer couldn't save his own daughter.
And in that moment, you see the trauma that is about to split these two families right down the middle, because suddenly they are not the virtual family anymore.
No, they're the parents of the victim and the parents of the accused. Okay, so let's shift to the investigation, because this is where that romantic, tragic suicide pact story runs headfirst into the cold, hard reality of forensic science.
And this is where Detective Sergeant Anne-Marie Marone comes in. And she's so crucial because she is the only person here who is not drinking the Bainbridge Kool-Aid.
She's the outsider.
She's the complete outsider. She just looks at the physical evidence, and to her, it looks really, really bad for Chris.
Bad feels like an understatement. You're saying it's structurally impossible.
It's just about impossible. So Chris's story is they went to the carousel. They brought a bottle of Canadian Club whiskey to build up their courage. He claims Emily shot herself in the right temple and he was supposed to go next. But the autopsy tells a completely different story.
It's the bullet trajectory that I just can't wrap my head around. Can we break that down?
Sure. So the bullet entered Emily's right temple. That's the entry wound. But it exited the rear of her skull, slightly to the right of center.
The back of her head?
The back of her head. Now, just mechanically, try to simulate that on yourself. If you hold a gun, or even just your finger, like a gun to your right temple, the natural ergonomics, the way your wrist works, points the barrel toward your left ear, or maybe slightly forward.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
To get that bullet to exit the back of your skull, you would have to crank your wrist backwards at an angle that is just, it's anatomically excruciating. It's completely unnatural.
It's like trying to scratch the middle of your back with a really heavy, awkward object in your hand.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. However, that exact trajectory front right to rear skull is a perfectly straight, perfectly natural line for someone else.
Someone standing in front of her.
Someone standing in front of her and firing.
That is literally the smoking gun.
Yeah.
But there was more, right? There was also evidence of a struggle.
Yes. The medical examiner found fresh bruising on Emily's wrist, and maybe even more damning, skin flakes under her fingernails.
Which just completely contradicts the idea of a peaceful, agreed-upon exit.
It does.
I mean, if you're sitting on a carousel bench ready to die with your soulmate, why are you scratching him? Why are you fighting back?
And then the investigation uncovers the motive, or at least what the prosecution believes is the motive. The autopsy reveals that Emily was 11 weeks pregnant.
And this is the pivot point. For the prosecution, for the town, for everyone. Suddenly, this isn't a tragic love story anymore. It's a cleanup operation.
That's how they see it.
The theory becomes, Chris Harte, golden boy, hockey star, bright future ahead of him, finds out his girlfriend is pregnant. He doesn't want the baby, or maybe he just doesn't want to derail his perfect life, so he stages a suicide pact, but only kills her.
It fits the classic unwanted pregnancy homicide profile almost perfectly, but it leaves this one huge nagging question.
Which is?
If he killed her to hide the pregnancy, why claim it was a suicide pact? Why not claim it was a robbery gone wrong or a stranger? Why place himself at the scene with the gun in his hand and admit to a plan to die? It doesn't quite add up.
That ambiguity, it forces us to look backward, which is what the source material does so well. It uses these extensive flashbacks to show us the evolution of Chris and Emily's relationship. And when you look closely, the red flags, they were there pretty early on. It wasn't just love, it was enmeshment.
It was a total blurring of identities. There's a flashback to when they're 9 years old. And Chris steals a copy of The Joy of Sex from the library.
A classic rite of passage for a lot of curious kids.
True, but look at how they process it. They don't look at it separately. They analyze it together. Then you have that scene at the pond where they're comparing their bodies. Emily calls her anatomy a giant compared to Chris's. And it's innocent on the surface, but what it's really doing is establishing that there are no physical boundaries between them. They're exploring the adult world as a single organism.
And the shift from that sort of sibling friendship to actual romance, that seems to happen around the ski trip to Sugarloaf. That felt like a much darker turning point to me.
It is. It's around 1993 or 94. They're teenagers. And Chris is annoyed with Emily for some reason. She's beating him at Game Boy. She's nagging him about something trivial. So he decides to punish her.
He decides to punish her.
He takes her down a ski run called Black Adder. It's a double black diamond trail way, way above her skill level.
So he intentionally put her in danger.
He did. And of course, she crashes. She breaks her leg badly. And this is the moment the whole dynamic shifts. Chris is just consumed by guilt. He rides in the ambulance with her. He refuses to leave her side at the hospital. He basically adopts this role of her guardian angel.
It's almost like a weird Munchausen by proxy dynamic.
Okay.
He hurts her, and then he gets to be the one to heal her, and that process bonds them even tighter.
That's a great way to put it. And it's while she's recovering, sleeping on the couch at his house, that he has his sexual awakening. He wakes up next to her and realizes his feelings have morphed from friendship to lust to love.
And the parents' reaction when they finally do kiss on New Year's Eve, James Harte, Chris's dad, walks in on them. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't set any boundaries. He just backs away smiling. He's relieved. The prophecy is finally fulfilled.
The keystone is locked in place.
Right. But the text also shows us that as the relationship gets more serious, Chris becomes the sin eater for both of them.
Yeah.
That Sambuca incident really stuck out to me.
Oh, that's a critical character beat. They get caught drinking Sambuca from his dad's liquor cabinet. Now, Chris is the one really drinking it, but Emily tries a sip and hates it.
Okay.
The parents walk in, and Emily immediately points at Chris and says, "He made me try it." She just throws him right under the bus.
And Chris just takes it. He doesn't defend himself.
He absorbs the blame completely. He realizes in that moment that in this relationship, his job is to be the protector, even if it means protecting her from her own lies. And that sets this incredibly dangerous precedent for the murder investigation.
Is he still doing it now? Is he taking the blame for the shooting to protect her reputation in some way? Or is he a batterer who controlled her and finally killed her?
And there's one other flashback that just complicates that cold-blooded killer theory so much. The hair.
The snowshoe hair.
The snowshoe hair. Chris goes hunting with his father, James. He actually manages to shoot the rabbit. But when he sees the reality of it, the blood, the limp body, the life gone, he vomits. He is physically sickened by the violence he just committed.
So we're left trying to reconcile the boy who pukes after shooting a rabbit with the boy who is accused of executing his pregnant girlfriend at point-blank range.
It's the central tension of the whole story. But there is a third option. A kind of philosophy that bridges that gap between love and killing. And to understand that, you have to look at James Harte, the father.
The dog story.
The dog story. This, for me, is the thematic DNA of the entire deep dive. Years ago, the Hartes had a dog, Charlie.
Right.
The dog was old, diabetic, suffering, losing control of its bladder. Gus, the mom, was trying to manage it with the vet, Michael. But James had a different solution.
James takes the dog out hunting with him. Into the woods with a gun.
And he shoots it in the back of the head.
He kills the family dog.
Kills the thing he loves. But in his mind, and this is so, so crucial, he didn't do it out of malice. He did it out of mercy. He couldn't stand to watch the suffering anymore, so he ended it.
And Chris grew up watching that man. He grew up absorbing that logic.
Exactly. So if Emily was suffering, whether it was from depression or the pressure of the pregnancy or just the crushing weight of everyone's expectations, is it possible that Chris inherited his father's twisted logic? Did he look at her and think the only way to save you is to end you?
That completely recontextualizes his confession to the psychiatrist when he says, I wasn't going there to kill myself. I was going there to save her.
Maybe he meant it in the strange, dark James Harte sense of the word save.
That's a chilling thought.
It is. But while Chris is navigating the legal system, the parents are they're disintegrating. And the way grief manifests in Melanie versus Gus is a masterclass in psychology.
Melanie Gold, the victim's mother, she goes completely scorched earth.
She absolutely does. Her entire world is out of control, so she tries to control all these tiny micro details. She becomes obsessive about cleaning, about household objects, about order. But underneath all that, there's just this magma of pure rage.
The library scene.
The library scene is so petty and yet so deeply, painfully human. A woman comes in and asks for a book about Atalanta, the Greek heroine.
Right.
Melanie knows exactly where it is. She's a librarian. But she intentionally sends this poor woman to the cookbook section.
It's this tiny, quiet act of sabotage. It's like she's saying, my daughter is dead, so why the hell should you be able to find your book?
Exactly. But her rage at the Hartes is much, much louder. At one point, she almost runs Chris over with her car.
I couldn't believe that part.
She sees him outside his house, just taking out the trash, and for a split second, the veil just drops. She swerves the car right at him. She actually wants to kill him.
And meanwhile, Gus Harte is living in a completely different reality. Denial isn't even a strong enough word for it.
It's magical thinking, pure magical thinking. She refuses to let James hire a lawyer at first because Chris isn't a criminal. She honestly believes that if she just keeps acting like nothing has changed, it will all go away.
She tries to bake her way out of the indictment.
She does. The birthday cake scene it broke my heart. Chris is indicted. He's facing life in prison for first-degree murder, and she is in the kitchen making a coconut cake with strawberry filling and 19 candles, one extra, for good luck.
She thinks if she just performs the rituals of being a good mother, the universe will somehow correct itself and give her son back.
But the universe isn't done. It has one more piece of evidence to drop into this whole mess: the watch.
This is the plot twist that feels like it belongs in a completely different genre, like a noir film.
It really does. Melanie gets a call from a jewelry store in town. Emily had ordered a custom gift for Chris's 18th birthday.
Which she never got to give him.
Right. So Melanie goes to pick it up. It's a beautiful, expensive gold watch.
And the engraving on the back is, "Forever, Love M."
Now, you have to look at the timeline. Chris's birthday was scheduled for days after the night at the carousel. So if Emily Gold walked to that carousel fully intending to die in a suicide pact,
Why did she order an expensive custom-engraved gift for a date she never planned to see?
you just don't buy birthday presents for a future you don't believe you're going to have.
That doesn't make any sense.
To Melanie, holding that watch, it's definitive, concrete proof. Emily planned to live, therefore there was no pact. Therefore, Chris murdered her. End of story.
But playing devil's advocate here,
Yeah.
is it possible she was conflicted, making plans for life and death at the same time? Is that something that happens?
That's the absolute tragedy of the suicidal mind. It's almost never linear. People often vacillate between hope and despair. But in a court of law, in front of a jury, that watch is it's damning. It completely dismantles the Romeo and Juliet defense.
So we're left with this completely shattered tableau. The virtual family is at war. The forensics suggest a violent struggle. The watch suggests a planned future. And yet, through it all, Chris Harte maintains that he loved her more than anything.
And that brings us right back to the central question of what love even looks like in the Harte household. Is love protecting someone? Is it taking the blame for them? Or is love ending their pain, even if you're the one who has to pull the trigger?
It all goes back to James and the dog.
It always comes back to the dog. If Chris is a killer, and that's a big if, I don't think he's a murderer in the conventional sense. I think he's a mercy killer.
Wow.
I think he looked at Emily, trapped by this pregnancy, trapped by their families, trapped by their whole lives, and he applied the only solution he'd ever been taught by his father. He ended her suffering.
And that makes it infinitely more terrifying than a simple crime of passion. It implies that their closeness, that common hypotenuse, it twisted their moral compass so badly that death actually started to look like an act of service.
And that the word forever engraved on that watch. Maybe it didn't mean a long life together.
You think it might have been?
It might have meant an eternity in the grave together. That was his gift to her.
That is a very heavy note to land on. It really makes you look at your own close relationships and wonder about the boundaries we draw, or the ones we fail to draw.
Sometimes the people who are closest to us are the ones we can't see clearly at all. And sometimes the tightest bonds are the ones that end up strangling you.
A huge thank you to all of you for joining us on this deep dive into the shadows of Bainbridge. This is definitely a case that lingers.
Stay curious, everyone, and maybe check your boundaries.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.